What's going on, everyone? Welcome to a Monday edition of Middays with Q on this 19th of May, 2025. Rich Quinones here. As always, we're powered by our good friends over at TriX57. Check out the YouTube channel at Rich Q on Q. Like, comment, subscribe, and as always, follow along on social media at Rich Q on X and IG. Back in the studios live Tuesday and Thursday, respectively. Anytime around 3-ish, might go 3:30-ish tomorrow, but we'll have 60 to play with both days respectively. Little NFL news dropping over the weekend. What would the NFL be without news dropping over the weekend? And today, mind you, our good friend, our NFL insider, Lloyd Vance, host of Lloyd Vance's Insider Football, kind enough to join us on this Monday. All right, I guess we'll start with local, the local news here, as we like to say. Look, I've been probably the biggest critic of Nick Sirianni, but when you go to two Super Bowls in 3 years and you eventually win one, you're going to get a contract extension. And the Philadelphia Eagles doing right by Nick Sirianni today with that contract extension. Still trying to get the little nuggets on the deal itself. But the bottom line is this. We thought, you and I respectively thought he was kind of a dead man walking going into last season after their collapse prior to. And now you win a Super Bowl, you get rewarded with a multi-year deal.
Yeah, Q, your guy. And it's crazy, though. The end of last season, we talk about that slide. What was it, 1-6, and then they
Yep.
lose the playoff game,
Yep.
extremely bad in Tampa. And it's like, what a difference a year makes. And the Eagles had a great season last season, one for the ages, and were dominant in the Super Bowl. And Nick Sirianni, at 43 years old, he's earned his extension. And when you crunch the numbers, Q, he has a 70% winning percentage,
Yeah.
fifth best in the National Football League with anybody that has 75 games started, coached or not. And he's 54 and 33. As you said, the two Super Bowls, he won one. Um, you know, he's cleaned it up. He's cleaned his act up. It started rocky. You start with that first press conference, and people are like, "Who is this guy? Where did he come from?" D3 wide receiver, and he's always talking about his high school days and learning from his father. But obviously, he is a motivator of men. The Eagles people that I talk to, the players, the coaches, everybody is on the same page with him. They believe in him, getting it done for him. It's always going to be a question: is he at that ilk? McVay and some of these other guys, but he is a winner.
Yeah, that's exactly it. I mean, think about this. They opened up the season with the sloppy win against Green Bay in Brazil, bad field. They had the horrible loss against Atlanta where Captain Kirk took them all the way down the field, and they lose that one, 22-21. Then everyone's reverting back to the third down conversion late in New Orleans. Dallas Goddard, here we go, and they win that game. If they lost it and then lost to Tampa, he's 1-3 going into the bye. Who knows what they're going to do? Now everyone can kind of spin their narrative, push it the way they want, but ultimately they went 16-1 after that. Their only blemish was against Washington. They railroaded teams in the playoffs. The Rams gave them a tough game. Green Bay hung around, but they blew out Washington. They blew out Kansas City in the Super Bowl to earn their second Lombardi trophy. And to your point, the numbers don't lie, period. I mean, he just wins. And the theatrics, the antics, you and I, we don't like them, but at the end of the day, this guy's 48-20, 706 win percentage, third highest in the Super Bowl era, 6-3 in the postseason, two Super Bowl appearances, one Super Bowl win, and that's where you're at, right? I mean, it's amazing to think what happens if they turned around and they pulled the plug on Sirianni after they lost to Tampa in the wild card game. I mean, that's
Yeah, and
I
they're,
guess I
yeah,
guess maybe that's why you shouldn't have always a knee-jerk reaction to things and let it play out.
yes, and the Eagles stayed the course with him. He was on that, first contract of 5 years or so. They let him play it out, and,
Yeah.
and let's face it, Q, he got called into the principal's office. And Jeffrey Lurie and Howie Roseman talked to him after the theatrics and that mess after the Cleveland win. And he kind of disgraced the franchise and himself, and he turned himself around. And I think he became more insular. He said, you know what? I need to look in the mirror. This team believes in me. I need to stop a lot of these things that are taken away from my resume. So, you can't take it away from him. Super Bowl winning head coach, and particularly for the Eagles franchise, as you said, franchise has been around, what, almost 100 years or so. They have two Super Bowl trophies in their case, and he brought them one of them.
Yeah. And that again, you build a lot of equity in the bank, right? I mean, look, when coaches win, they're going to get rewarded. It's a little different sometimes with the players. Am I paying you for what I think you're going to do or what you've done? Now, as we go from head coach, who's always in line with the quarterback, let's go to quarterback on the West Coast. You said it last week. You reported that you figured the deal was going to get done fairly shortly, and it did. Well, from when we spoke, if you will, the 49ers locking up Brock Purdy. I mean, the numbers are staggering when you kind of break it down from what this kid was making to what he is going to make, well over 250, 181 million guaranteed. Good for him, Mr. Irrelevant. Here you go. I believe he's a top 10 quarterback. I know sometimes when people tune into the show or check out the channel, they just look at the titles and the headlines and how it's tagged, and they don't really listen to what we're friggin' saying. I've always been a supporter of Brock Purdy. I think the kid deserves to get paid. I think at times he looks like a top five quarterback, definitely a top 10 quarterback. But again, it's all semantics, it's all subjective. Ultimately, the 49ers had to get a deal done because if you go back and you look at some of their deals over the past, some of their deals when they're trying to, get stuff done with marquee players, it drags on and on and on, whether, it was Ayuk, whether it was, Kittle, whether it was, trying to get something done with Debo, Williams, but they got it done. It doesn't have to linger in the training camp. So, again, do we focus more on what we believe he's going to do? Do we focus on the dollar amount? I mean, where are you at with Brock Purdy? And, was it the right move for the 49ers to do?
Who I do think is the right move for them. Brock Purdy's 25 years old. Yes, everybody's going to always focus on 2022 draft when he's pick 262, Mr. Irrelevant, but he's kind of superseded then. And we thought he was going to get in the neighborhood of Tua and all the rest of these guys. He comes in about 53 million per year, and that's what Tua is. He's 53.1. Josh Allen, last year's MVP, 55 million. So he's in that neighborhood. Look, he's a starting quarterback in NFL, a winning quarterback. He has a record of 23 and 13 overall, 4-2 in the playoffs. So he is in a conversation with some of these guys. Now, when you look at, okay, is he spectacular on the field? Is he like a Lamar Jackson? He's lighting up the scoreboard. No, he's but he's the leader of this team. The Niners had to get it done, and that's why they moved on from Debo Samuel, Dre Greenlaw, and a bunch of other guys this year, kind of moving their contracts out to set up this contract for Brock Purdy. Hopefully, have the better year than last year. Only 6-11 last season.
Yeah, and I've mentioned too, and I brought this up last week when we were talking a little bit about these potential negotiations. They did suffer, to be fair, a lot of injuries on both sides of the ball. So I think it kind of hampered their potential going forward. You talk about these weapons, you lose running backs and wide receivers, tight end banged up, an all-pro left tackle late in the season. I mean, it's hard to evaluate a quarterback when all the pieces aren't in place. But prior to the season prior to, he played really well. I mean, I think he's got a high ceiling. And again, whether we believe it's five, six, seven, eight, nine, or top 10, the 49ers are now entrusting him and they're saying, look, go out there, be the franchise quarterback we believe you can be over the next or for the next 7, 8, 9 years. Now, the flip side of that is when you look at this organization as a whole and you look at the landscape of the NFC, do you believe the 49ers window is closing, open, shut? Because who knows again what happens if he doesn't get hurt a couple years ago in the NFC Championship against the Philadelphia Eagles, right? Was that their time? Has the window shut for the 49ers? Is it open? Is it a crack? Is there a little breeze coming in?
It's going to be interesting to you because you have John Lynch there, the general manager, Shanahan, obviously been there for a number of years, and they're switching some things up. They're bringing in Clint Kubiak as the offensive coordinator. Salah's coming back as defensive coordinator. So trying to go back to the future with a lot of the things they're doing there. And I think they still have some opportunity. Now, the thing is, they still have Trent Williams. They still have Christian McCaffrey. George Kittle, as you were saying, on defense. They still have most of their playmakers on that defense, and we'll see how that kind of turns out. But the division, it only took 10 wins last year for the
Right,
Rams to win that division.
right,
And
right.
we know they beat each other as you put them in a box. They beat, one can beat each other one week. I think it's going to be a very competitive NFC West, and they'll be in the mix. So, yeah, I still think they have an opportunity.
When you look around the NFC, I mean, we know the AFC is a very, very hard conference, but when you look at the NFC and just talk about the difficulty coming out of the NFC, I mean, hell, all you have to do is stay in their division, right? With Arizona, the Rams, and Seattle. The South, you've got Tampa Bay. The North, you might get three playoff teams again. The Lions, the Packers, Minnesota, or the Bears rising, right? Then, of course, the Eagles and the Washington Commanders, they're getting ready to take that next step. I mean, if I were to say when healthy, if healthy, and all the pieces in place, how would you rank the top three or four teams in the NFC? It's obvious you have to start with the Philadelphia Eagles, but where would you go two, three, four, and five?
Wow. The Commanders are high in the mix. You got to throw them in there.
Yeah.
The Lions, even though they were disappointment in the playoffs, and you wonder about what Goff's doing, but when you look at their roster and the changes they've made, you want to see how those two new coordinators are going to do. But I'd say you got to throw them in the mix there. Um, the Rams, I'm interested in that NFC West. Are they going to be able to hold off the Niners? Are they going to be able to hold off the Seahawks, are kind of changing some things around in terms of their quarterback? And uh, the Cardinals. We've all said they could be this year's surprise team. They're bringing a lot of things together. Had a pretty good draft, and then can Kyle Murray take that step up? So it's going to be a fun conference. But yeah, I definitely would say Niners. Out of the 16 teams in the conference, I'd probably say they're probably maybe 9 or 10 right now. I'd say.
Interesting. So I go, obviously, the Philadelphia Eagles. You got to go Washington because they met the Philadelphia Eagles in the NFC Championship. The Lions are there at three. I think when healthy, the 49ers are right there. I'm not as high on the Rams as you are. And you know what I feel about the NFC South. By default, that's Tampa. Minnesota lost Sam Bradford. It's an unknown now with the quarterback, right? Let's be honest. Green Bay, they're kind of hit or miss. I mean, so I definitely think the 49ers are top five in that conference. And again, you're right. When you look around, there are quarterbacks that we're still waiting to see. Are they going to take that next step? Now, Jaden Daniels burst on the scene, right? I mean, I just is it set up for him to take a step back, or do you believe that Washington now is poised? They arrived at the party early last year and now they want to stay late. Do you believe he's ready to take that next step and become that just superstar? I mean, look, this kid is, look, I think he's trending up, very good, star-ish, but are we looking at, wow, this kid is unbelievable. This is Lamar Jackson, Patrick Mahomes-esque type of quarterback, Josh Allen-esque type of quarterback.
Well, Washington believes he is their guy, and they're building around him. They traded for Larry Tunsil, and they're bringing a lot of pieces, particularly trying to fix that offensive line. The defense is kind of in flux, but you have Dan Campbell there, and it's consistency. He's going to have the same staff there. Cliff Kingsbury's there calling the plays, and it's all set up for Jaden Daniels to be the next face of the National Football League, particularly in the NFC East. We'll see if he's able to handle that mantra. But
Yeah.
he's just incredible, Q. And yeah, I don't. Everybody I talk to says he is focused on football. You don't see him in a lot of commercials and this that. He's all about the team, and he wants to ascend and keep moving forward. So it's going to be fun to watch him, and I think he's going to have another good season.
All right, I feel like I have to bring it up, even though I don't want to bring it up. Aaron Rodgers is still out there, right? I mean, he's just hanging around. He's hanging around. He's hanging around. The Pittsburgh Steelers don't have a quarterback. They just don't. It just you're left with Skylar Thompson. You got Will Howard, who was a 6th round pick, and Mason Rudolph. So it's not good. There was an idea that was floated around that if the Steelers can't sway Rodgers or they're giving him a hardline deadline, there was an idea, and I think it was by the Athletic NFL Football Show. I think Robert Mays threw this out, so I want to give credit. That's fair, right? He brought up the idea that he thinks the Cowboys might be willing to trade Dak Prescott for a mountain of picks, more specifically, 3 first rounders. If you're the Steelers and you believe your opportunity now to compete in the AFC North, Baltimore's getting a little longer in the tooth. Cincinnati had to clean up their defense. You are the Pittsburgh Steelers. You're always going to be competitive. And then the Browns are a bad team. You can make a run here. You know, apples and oranges. Dak Prescott or a 40-year-old Aaron Rodgers, that's number one. And then number two, would you even consider doing that if you were the Pittsburgh Steelers? I mean, you're talking three first rounders?
I don't mean to step on anybody's theory, but knowing guys in the Steelers and the way they go about their business, it just doesn't seem like their MOQ. And then you factor in
With the
Dak
money.
Prescott has that $60 million
Yeah.
season contract, and it's like there's always cap ramifications if he gets traded for both teams. I just don't know how that will work out. The Steelers always seem to be all right. Let's draft, let's build. Last year they kind of stepped away from that, bringing in franchise free agent quarterbacks, and it just did not work for them, particularly Russell Wilson experiment, Justin Fields. And as crazy as it sounds, Mike Tomlin is talking up Rudolph, he's talking up Howard. Um, you know, would they be crazy enough to kind of go the route the Raiders did last year and go with these journeymen as their starter? Because I think it could be a disaster for them. But I just feel like that's the way the Steelers would go. And Rodgers, you have to start saying, okay, is he even going to sign with them? I always think he may retire. So it's
Yeah.
going to be interesting to watch the next couple of weeks.
I feel as though maybe they put all their eggs in the Rodgers basket, which is never a good thing. By the way, their cap space, 34 million. Their dead money is only 6 million. Effective cap space, 30 million. Active cap spending, 244 million. So for those that are like, okay, Q, what do all those numbers mean? Look, taking on Prescott's contract's not going to be easy, but they have a positive financial situation over the next few years. So they might be able to do it. I don't know if Dak Prescott's the answer. That's a, you know, you, that's a bad spot to be, that organization, because you brought in quarterbacks in Justin Fields and Russell Wilson on 1 year contracts. So you knew heading into the offseason, you were going to jettison them. They were not going to be around. They were going to be released. They were going to be free agents, I should say. And now you put yourself in a pretty precarious spot. And by the way, to your point on Aaron Rodgers, if I'm an organization like the Pittsburgh Steelers, I mean, I'm giving him a deadline period. I'm saying, look, May 25th, June 1st, we need a call on the phone. That's it. Let us know. You don't need to fly out. We're not going to fly out like the Jets did to tell you, hey, you still love football. Well, guess what? We're releasing you. But give us a call. Text us. Send a carrier. Send a pigeon with a note. Do something, but it has to be by this date. And I feel as though they're still waiting this little glimmer of hope if you're a Steelers fan or Tomlin or the Browns that, man, you can get Rodgers for maybe a year or two. I don't even think that's a smart move, to be quite honest. I don't think he can play anymore, but you got to give him a deadline, do you not?
You do, Omar Khan, their general manager, the Rooney family who own that team, they're definitely they're going to set a deadline. And they're like, all right, enough's enough. Which direction are we moving here? Because we know Mike Tomlin's a no nonsense kind of guy. If this drags on in mini camps, etc., he's not going to go for it. And Rodgers is 41 years old, and what does he have left in the tank? His performance was not that great for the Jets, too inconsistent. And then you look at the Steelers, they're like, okay, we won. We made the playoffs with Russell Wilson, even at his age, and kind of sputtered down the end. But with that defense and the running game that they're building, they can win some games with an average quarterback. I don't know if Mason Rudolph or Howard's the guy, but it's going to be interesting to see, okay, do they kind of change their philosophy for Rodgers? And then if they do that, the Jets changed their philosophy for Rodgers, and look how that blew up in their face.
Yeah. Which, by the way, speaking of these quarterbacks, did you hear this again? Believe what you want on social, but there's been this thought or report being floated around that Derek Carr basically was kind of pulling a Carson Palmer. Like at the end of the day, no one's saying he's not hurt, but he just did not want to be part of the Saints anymore. And that's why he decided to, quote, retire. Now, again, because you get, I believe, he's got to give back that money, right? I mean, the buyout, so to speak, the money Derek Carr does. I don't know if he filed his retirement papers. I mean, I know Amani Toomer told me this years ago. When he retired, he waited 5 years to file his papers. But point being, is it possible that Derek Carr just wanted to get out of New Orleans and maybe try to get a fresh start. I mean, you know, it that's kind of what the buzz is out there.
It's always a conspiracy theory, Q, but that team holds his rights, so they're going to hold his rights, and if he wanted to play again, he's going to have to work it out with the Saints for a trade and kind of figure out fair compensation. But I think he's definitely hurt, and he's going to have time to heal up and then kind of see from there. Maybe he says, okay, after some time off, he wants another opportunity. But for now, he's retired, and they're another franchise. You're like, what are they going to do? They have Shuck there. They have Spencer Rattler. They have kind of a mess with the Saints, and it's going to be a long season for them the way the
Well,
quarterback position looking.
the reason I bring it up is because there were some reports that prior to the retirement, Carr reached out to a couple teams to kind of gauge him and feel, if there was mutual interest. So listen, stranger things have happened, have they not? And to your point with the Saints, I mean, can the Saints now be that dark horse team? Well, between the two, them and the Steelers, to grab Aaron Rodgers.
I just think if Rodgers looks at those two franchises and say, okay, who's closer? The Saints are nowhere close. They have a new head coach coming there, and Kellen Moore, and he probably wants a young quarterback to kind of put his system with. And right now it's looking like it's Steelers or bust for Aaron Rodgers. Either he goes there or he retires. And
Yeah, but the South stinks. There's one team, it's
yeah,
Tampa Bay.
he could have an opportunity there, but the only thing is the Saints' offensive line is very bad. Their quarterbacks are harassed very often last year, and they also have Ramczyk retire on that offensive line, and Kamar's getting older, and you have Olave with the concussion issue. So there's a lot swirling around that Saints team, and it's just not attractive for a free agent older quarterback, I'd say. But right now, the Saints, they're going to have to figure that thing out. And the thing is, Moore, he's in his first season. He's going to have a long leash. So we'll see. And Q, I'd probably say Rodgers will sign with the Steelers once they put that mandate that says, all right, you got to sign or else. And he'll probably say, all right, he'll come out of the cave, go on the McAfee show and announce he's showing up. But there's going to be some
Yeah,
drama in Pittsburgh if he shows up there, man.
yeah. Always a Monday edition of Middays with Q, 422. East Coast, Rich Quinones, Lloyd Vance. We started with the Eagles, one with the Eagles, former Jets GM Joe Douglas returned into the Philadelphia Eagles, senior scouting role. So he was the VP of player personnel for several years, 2016 to 19. Obviously, build that championship squad, if you will. And, look, this is what happens, right? When you win, you add on, whether it's personnel, whether it's the coaching staff, whether it's players. And right now you have to say unequivocally, like throughout the NFL and maybe the entirety of sports, the most cleanest, the most functional, the most consistent, the most successful franchise at this moment being run, as much as it pains me to say this, it's the Philadelphia Eagles. I mean, how do you dispute that? How do you deny that?
Yeah, they're bringing the magic back with Joe Douglas. He was on that 2017 team that he built, and they won the Eagles' first Super Bowl. Bringing him back in, and a lot of guys I talk to always say, "Look, if you get a chance for a GM job, you take it, even if it's a bad one." And he went up to the Jets. We know about the mess with Woody Johnson there, and he tried to make it work, and it just didn't. We talked about Aaron Rodgers, how it all blew up, but bringing Douglas is a good move by the Philadelphia Eagles, and it's crazy, Q, because you and I have talked so long. Just remember Chip Kelly sending Howie Roseman to the corner. You know what I mean? He basically took his
Sure,
job,
sure.
and what they make him in charge of the training staff, and
Put them in the
the
little
team was
kids
kind of
table.
rudderless. And he's pushed all the right buttons over the last couple of years. In terms of just signing the right guys, drafting the right guys, and you're correct. The Eagles are right up there. With one, I probably say with KC as one of the best run organizations in the National Football League.
He, of course, is Lloyd Vance, host of Lloyd Vance's Insider Football. Kind enough to join us on a Monday edition of Middays with Q. Once we're up and running in the studios and Triax, I know he will be down with me, and we will break down a lot of the NFL. Listen, you got mini camps, training camps, dog days of summer right around the corner. We're getting ready to say goodbye to Memorial Day. We get in the summer. We got a lot of win totals, over unders, as we mentioned, the dicey game with the schedules, the wins and losses. We'll do that a little more later on the week, but it's always good to have Lloyd join us. Don't forget, in our notes with our betting segment, powered by Back Your Play, BYP20, that'll get you 20% off your first purchase of fresh roasted coffee. Give Lloyd a follow on social media at Lloyd Vance, and he's going to join me later in the week on Middays with Q. Always appreciate a couple moments, my friend. Thank you.
All right, Q, thanks for having me on.